No programme about famous festivals in Cleethorpes would be complete without exploring the history of the iconic venues that have hosted events in the town for over half a century. In this first of two programmes, we look at venues that have now disappeared.
Cleethorpes was part of a touring circuit. When bands played 35 dates around the UK, they all played Cleethorpes Winter Gardens. It was, so it was a key venue,
The Winter Gardens began life in 1934 as the Art Deco-styled Olympia Amusement Hall. Built with compensation received by railway worker John Eyre, it provided an ideal venue for events and festivals of all kinds. During the Second World War, the Olympia was used as a cookhouse and dining area for a Royal Artillery unit, before reopening in 1946 as the Winter Gardens, providing a centre for community activities and a major entertainment venue.
So bear in mind, it was more of a community centre. The tweeters, the flower arrangers, everything used the Winter Gardens because there were 2 or 3 rooms. And live music was only one night a week that we did.
There'd be nobody in this town that hadn't been to the Winter Gardens for some occasion, be it a car boot sale or a christening or a funeral tea. Everybody in the town would have gone through the doors of the Winter Gardens at some stage.
Sporting events began in 1939 with boxing, which continued until the 1970s. Bouts often organised by local promoter Joe Frater, the first black boxing promoter in the country. The famous Melody Night, known locally as the Bags Ball, was popular with both locals and visitors seeking company, romance or just a good night out. Held every Wednesday evening, the tradition continued into the next century, live music changing to disco, responding to the tastes of a new generation. The explosion of popular music in the 1960s saw the Winter Gardens develop as a significant music venue, hosting major music festivals and some of the biggest names in the business, brought here by local music promoter Stephen Stanley.
Elton John had played there, Black Sabbath had played there, and Joe Cocker, endless names had played this venue. It was so iconic. And everybody in this area, if it wasn't for the Winter Gardens, wouldn't have got into all this music. I wouldn't be sat here now talking about being a promoter if as a kid I hadn't gone to that venue. I started Solid Entertainments in 1979. I grew up in Grimsby, having been born in Cleethorpes, and used to go to every concert that was at Cleethorpes Winter Gardens from being 12, 13-year-old at school. That's how I got my musical education, and that's how I wanted to be a promoter, because what happened was the Winter Gardens, suddenly the band stopped coming, and we didn't know why. There was no explanation. So I rang the then manager of Cleethorpes Winter Gardens, a guy called Ian Galloway, and said, why are we not getting any bands at the Winter Gardens? He said, oh, the people who used to do it, they've gone away now. So I sort of jumped in and said, oh, I'll do it. And that was the famous words, yeah.
The Winter Gardens was host of the famous annual Cleethorpes Folk Festival for over 50 years.
Well, the Folk Festival in Cleethorpes started in 1964. It moved to the Winter Gardens because the Winter Gardens had 3-4 rooms that could be used. Anybody who is top of the folk scene has played at Cleethorpes Folk Festival. Barbara Dixon, Kate Rusby, John Bowden, Silly Wizard. Also, anybody who was top of the tree. We only got the best artists for Cleethorpes Folk Festival.
Jimmy Jackson was the owner of Cleethorpes Winter Gardens. He was at the venue when the Sex Pistols played there. And that's a big story because the Sex Pistols only played a handful of venues. And then the tour got cancelled, but they played the Winter Gardens. I saw all the rock bands there, AC/DC, Queen, Sparks, Cockney Row, everybody played there. There's a whole programme about the history of the Winter Gardens.
As a centre for Northern Soul, it rivalled Wigan Casino and the Twisted Wheel. During the 1990s, it was home to the house music scene, drawing visitors to the monthly music festivals featuring Italian duo Fulvio Pernoli and DJs Ian Ossia and Nigel Lawson. Sporting heritage continued into the 90s when wrestling came to the Winter Gardens, often featuring local wrestler Stevie Knight. Charity football dinners organised by former Grimsby Town player Dave Boland saw Dennis Law, George Best and Sir Bobby Charlton among the many famous guests. Even 3 times Grand National winner Red Rum visited the Winter Gardens. Across the road from the Winter Gardens was another iconic Cleethorpes venue, the Cafe Dansant.
I got a phone call from the Winter Gardens. He says, I understand you lost the Memorial Hall. Will you come and do a deal with me at the Cafe Dansant? So we moved everything to the Cafe Dansant, but we had all sorts of the top artists there, or we put them over at the Winter Gardens.
Also starting life in the 1930s as the Kingsway Pavilion, the Cafe Dansant became a popular dance and music venue through the war years. A grand reopening in 1954, following a luxury refurbishment, saw 5 hours of dining and dancing, culminating in a cabaret by the then 18-year-old Julie Andrews. Like the Winter Gardens, the Cafe Dansant was host to many famous 60s bands, including London-based rock band the Kinks. Demolished in 1966 to make way for a toilet block, the site now hosts the Kingsway Kiosk. The Winter Gardens continue to play host to a wide range of community activities and major music festivals until it too closed in 2007.
Overnight, the bulldozers moved in. So before anything could be done to stop the demolition, they demolished it. It didn't just stop big names coming to the area. When I was doing all the concerts at the Winter Gardens, there were at least ongoing a rota of 40 local bands, all good, all from 12 years old to 30-year-olds, all ages. When the Winter Gardens closed, all of a sudden there was nowhere for anyone to play, and the local music scene for a few years completely collapsed. It had gone, we'd lost the moment.
New venues are now hoping to regenerate the music scene in Cleethorpes. Thanks to the work of people like Steve Stanley at Solid Entertainments and Warren Jolly at Moon on the Water, the music scene in Cleethorpes is now enjoying a revival, once again attracting famous names and providing opportunities for local artists to perform. In part 2, we explore some of the historic entertainment venues in the town that have now been repurposed and reinvented to serve the changing needs of a new generation of locals and visitors to the town.